In 2002, the sci-fi action thriller Minority Report was released to box office success and critical acclaim. It was the long-awaited collaboration between director Steven Spielberg and movie star Tom Cruise, and it seemed to be a winning combination. The two were keen to work together on a new film, but would lightning strike twice?
Because lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place. Shit!
The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells was published in 1898 and pioneered the alien invasion concept we're so familiar with today. The book saw numerous adaptations, including a famous radio play by Orson Welles, but it didn't reach the silver screen until 1958 in a version produced by George Pal. Steven Spielberg grew up watching 50s sci-fi films, including Pal's War of the Worlds, as well as This Island Earth, and Earth vs. the Flying Saucers, among others. However, it was Tom Cruise who suggested making a new version of Wells's novel. After Minority Report, the duo had 3 potential projects to collaborate on, and they both jumped at the chance to make War of the Worlds. During development, Spielberg and Cruise hired screenwriter David Koepp, who had co-written the screenplay for Jurassic Park. Koepp wanted to take a completely fresh approach to the genre, creating a list of cliches he sought to avoid in this new movie.
I took a lot of notes as I was reading the book, and one of the things I did is I made a list of all the things I felt we should not have in the movie. Like, no destructions of famous landmarks, no shots of Manhattan getting the shit kicked out of it, no shots of generals standing around a large map pushing, ships with big sticks into place. No TV news cameras, no news crews out photographing destruction and then being destroyed by it. We just went through all of what we thought were the cliches of the genre and vowed not to do those, because what that left us with was trying something that was a truly first-person account, which is what the book is.
In the film, Tom Cruise plays Ray Ferrier, a divorced parent estranged from his 2 children. While they're staying at his for the weekend, the tripods attack, and the trio embark on a perilous journey to reach Boston, where they hope to reunite as a family. Tom Cruise's casting as a blue-collar everyman is often criticized. Cruise has such an innate movie star action hero quality about him that many find it hard to take him seriously as a working-class average Joe. However, I think the casting is great. If Ray Ferrier was meant to be a likable everyman, then I would agree with the criticism, but Cruise's casting worked because, and this will sound harsh, Ray Ferrier sucks. We get the distinct impression of a man who peaked in high school or college, and never properly grew up and never took responsibility as a father. He zips around in a sports car and cracks a smile like he's God's gift to the world, but in reality he's a bad father and, we can infer, wasn't a very good husband. Far from his movie star charm detracting from the character, it helps crystallize who Ray Ferrier is seconds after he's introduced. Dakota Fanning plays Ray Ferrier's daughter, Rachel. Fanning was an acclaimed actress from a very early age, being only 11 years old at the time. She was the first and only choice for the role of Rachel after Spielberg had previously worked with her on his sci-fi miniseries Taken. Justin Chatwin plays Robbie Ferrier. His breakthrough role before War of the Worlds was in the acclaimed crime drama series Traffic. Unfortunately, after War of the Worlds, Chatwin's movie career struggled with the release of the widely panned Dragon Ball Evolution. He has, however, found regular work on television, starring in the US version of Shameless, and appearing in sci-fi shows like Doctor Who and Another Life. Tim Robbins plays Harlan Ogilvy, named after a character who appeared in the original novel. Robbins is an accomplished actor and filmmaker, most well known as Andy Dufresne in The Shawshank Redemption. He recently made another foray into science fiction in the Apple TV original Silo. Ogilvy's character was a collaborative effort between Robbins, Koepp, and Spielberg. It was Robbins' idea to add trinkets from Ogilvy's dead family to his costume. Miranda Otto of Lord of the Rings fame plays Ray's ex-wife Marianne. Otto was pregnant when Spielberg called her about the role and assumed she'd have to pass. However, Spielberg and Koepp decided to add Otto's pregnancy into the film so she could still make it. Anne Robinson and Jean Barry, who played Sylvia Van Buren and Dr. Clayton Forrester in the original War of the Worlds, make a cameo appearance as the Ferriers' grandparents. Filming began in November 2004, split between locations in Virginia, Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, and California. A budget of $150 million was allocated to the film, which included several large set pieces. For the plane crash aftermath, the production purchased a retired Boeing 747. The plane was then dismantled and dressed, and the neighborhood was constructed around it. The hill battle sequence used over 100 personnel from the US Marine Corps. The Corps also lent the film the use of several tanks, Humvees, and other armored fighting vehicles. To create the huge explosion which rises over the hill, the special effects team used over 1,500 gallons of gasoline. Though a farmhouse was shot on location, after Ray emerges from Ogilvy's cellar, the exterior is a massive set built at a soundstage in California. For the scene where Ray is picked up by the tripod and placed into a cage, a section of the tripod was built practically. The rest of the tripod and the surrounding environment were all added digitally. Likewise, the ferry sequence used a combination of live-action plates, miniatures, and CG elements to create the final scene. All three elements were also used for the scene where the ferriers flee the first tripod attack. The freeway was recreated and destroyed digitally, but many of the buildings and vehicles were miniatures. The elaborate blend of practical stunts, miniatures, and CGI means the visual effects in War of the Worlds hold up extremely well. The movie is almost 20 years old, but the effects have hardly aged at all. The tripod design was largely inspired by the descriptions in the original novel. Wells's description of mechanical appendages which appeared organic was a stunning bit of foresight. Essentially, Wells described what we would now call biomimicry. The artists designing the tripods also took inspiration from modern fiber optic cameras and robotics. The CG effects on the tripods are outstanding, with flawless compositing and excellent animation. By leaning into the organic aspects of the machines, the tripods come across more like gigantic monsters, and their bellowing horns make them a terrifying presence. The aliens themselves aren't quite as successful. They were also given a three-legged motif, to suggest the tripods mimicked the aliens' own physiology. While the effects are just as good, the design is a little underwhelming. In my opinion, they look a little too much like the aliens from Independence Day. Though the aliens do appear in the original novel, I feel it was a mistake in general to show them in the movie. The tripods are already so existentially terrifying. Their intimidating presence would only be more effective if we never saw the creatures driving them. Perhaps it would have been more appropriate to only show the aliens after they succumb to infection at the end. Being a Spielberg movie, John Williams was enlisted as composer. Unlike his previous scores, there's a much greater emphasis on horror. The score is effectively creepy and unsettling, but compared to Williams' other work, it sounds quite generic. There are few, if any, recognizable motifs, and for the most part the action is driven by simple repetitive rhythms, and the horror by ambient drones. It's effective, but unlike other Williams scores, it's not one which you can enjoy on its own. The film was completed in April 2005, coming in under budget at $132 million. War of the Worlds was released on the 29th of June 2005. If you're enjoying this video, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, or if you want to support my work more directly, I'm also on Patreon. I first saw War of the Worlds when it hit DVD in November 2005. I had already seen Independence Day, many 50s, 60s sci-fi classics, and I was already a Spielberg fan, so War of the Worlds looked like it was right up my street. However, the feeling the film always left me with was one of utter dread. The striking imagery and frightening concepts have stayed with me for a long time. War of the Worlds, however, remains controversial among Spielberg fans, and fans of the sci-fi genre in general. The film is often criticized for its plotting, characters, and especially its ending. Unlike a crowd pleaser like Independence Day, War of the Worlds is a nightmarish survival story where the grander narrative of the invasion is left largely vague. This fresh approach to the subject matter is both a strength and a weakness of the film. I said earlier in the video that, in my view, Tom Cruise is actually perfectly cast for this character. His movie star charisma is effectively used against him to make Ray Ferrier a very unlikable character. It's in the little details, how he doesn't help Rachel with her bag, puffs his chest at Robbie when he's called out on his bullshit, and all the moments he tries to be cool falling completely flat.
Here we go. It's 2 for you. It's 2 for Robbie. It's 2 for me, 1 for the house.
Only Tom Cruise could play a character so lame and still have us root for him. Dakota Fanning gives an incredible performance as Rachel. She perfectly captures the kind of fear a child would experience in this kind of situation, and nails those few moments of deadpan humor.
Maybe a little blackjack?
I'm allergic to peanut butter.
Since when?
Birth.
Justin Chatwin's Robbie, however, isn't nearly as strong. Chatwin's performance is solid, but the character is inconsistently written. At first, he's the responsible older brother, acting as the stand-in parental figure for Rachel that Ray never was. Capable and even heroic at times. But then suddenly he has this unrelenting drive to join the army and fight back against the invaders. In the moment, anger may be understandable, but in the scene where he rushes up the hill to join the battle, he acts as if he's in some kind of jingoistic trance. It's just not believable that he'd willingly abandon his sister like this. His reappearance at the end also feels like a bit of a cop-out. All that being said, there's also a lot to admire in War of the Worlds. Like Minority Report, the film offers Spielberg many opportunities to showcase his outstanding blocking skills. The ground-level perspective gives the huge set pieces a palpable sense of urgency and grit. The first emergence of the tripod is a masterclass in building tension. The sequence effortlessly moves through curiosity, panic, wonder, and finally sheer horror. The tripods themselves are instantly one of the most iconic movie monsters. What makes them so memorable is not their power, but their coldness. They are absolutely dominating in size, but there's no viciousness to their actions. They don't race to hunt down fleeing humans, but instead the tripods erase people as casually as a gardener mowing the lawn. And it's this total recontextualization that allows Spielberg to conjure up pure nightmare fuel in even the most mundane settings, like the plane wreck in the suburbs or the mob attacking the car. Once again, it's the details which make it so effective. The banshee screams as people are vaporized, the desperate man ripping through the windshield with his bare hands, passengers drowning in their cars as the ferry turns over. It all makes the nightmare visceral and relatable. Once on the journey to Boston, the Ferrier family functions as audience surrogates through each set piece. Maintaining the ground-level perspective of the books gives the spectacle added weight and impact. However, the third act is where the narrative momentum stalls. After so many huge set pieces, most of the third act is confined to Ogilvy's basement. In isolation, the sequence is a remarkable piece of filmmaking and performance. Tim Robbins is quietly unsettling as Harlan Ogilvy. At first, his gruffness and awkward mannerisms can be chalked up to trauma, but we feel the looming danger emanating from the character as his madness is slowly revealed.
Take them by surprise the way they took us. Take them by surprise.
The probe scene also showcases more of Spielberg's fantastic blocking, as he uses the clear geography of the space and positions of the characters to ratchet up the suspense. As a self-contained horror movie, these 30 minutes are brilliantly crafted, but perhaps it should have come in the middle of the film rather than towards the end. Perhaps there should have been one big final set piece to make a proper climax. Instead, the movie feels like it peters out. The ending will either make or break the film completely for the viewer. Spielberg and Koepp were between a rock and a hard place in adapting the book here. The idea that the invaders are defeated by Earth bacteria may have been profound in the 1890s, but it doesn't hold up to modern scrutiny. Either way, it's still a bleak ending. Humanity could not fight off the aliens, and only survived due to circumstances completely out of its control. The closing narration tries to put a positive spin on it, but it's wrong, because in truth all those people who tried to fight back did die in vain. War of the Worlds leaves its characters and the viewer with few answers. The world suffers an unimaginable, inexplicably horrific event and is then simply left to deal with the trauma. That can be an extremely powerful note to end on, but I can also see why others would be left disappointed. For me, War of the Worlds is a movie where the parts are greater than the whole. Many sequences show Spielberg at the absolute height of his cinematic craft, and its imagery and mood have long stayed with me. I have many problems with it, but I've gone back and rewatched the film many times, and have always gotten something valuable from the experience. It's a film I admire more than I like, but that admiration goes a long way. Upon release, War of the Worlds was a huge commercial success, grossing over $600 million worldwide. It was Tom Cruise's highest grossing film until Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. It was well received by critics, but audiences were more divided. Perhaps some viewers were expecting another Independence Day, but what they got was closer to Poltergeist. As much as I admire the movie, I think War of the Worlds was the moment Spielberg's sensibilities broke with the mainstream. His next big blockbuster was Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which he admittedly didn't want to make. Though it was a box office success, it is pop culturally derided, and efforts like Tintin and the BFG failed to break through. His most consistent success was with mid-budget historical dramas like Lincoln, Warhorse, Bridge of Spies, and The Post. All were successful, but none of them came close to matching the heights of his most iconic films. Spielberg's finger may no longer be on the pulse, but frankly, he doesn't need it to be. When you've had a career like Steven Spielberg's, nothing can tarnish that legacy. Now in his late 70s, Spielberg is still a pantheon filmmaker, driven by an unquenchable creative passion. And though the box office no longer seems to be on his side, the work he's putting out in this era will stand the test of time. West Side Story and The Fabelmans are, in my opinion, two of his greatest works, which is saying something for his filmography. For his detractors, Spielberg can never win. When he was producing blockbuster hits throughout the 80s and 90s, he was dismissed as a mere commercial entertainer. When he later pivoted to acclaimed, intelligent dramas, he was accused of being past his prime. But the truth is, Spielberg's work will last out of sheer craft. No one has come close to having a career comparable to his. His influence on cinema and pop culture at large is almost indescribable, and his name is guaranteed to go down in history as one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Spielbergian sci-fi. Unfortunately, the YouTube algorithm hasn't been all that kind to these videos, so if you like what I do, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon. If you want to support the channel more directly, jump over to my Patreon page where you can see videos early, uncut, and ad-free. I'd like to thank all of my patrons and members, with an ultra thanks to Alex Miller, Eamon Kelly, Michael Hardy, Ian Hodge, County Ark, Mike Halsey, Retro PC Gamer, Benjamin Stokes, Hiroshi the Dog, Movie Magic, Charles Borsam, Olivia Computer, Bano, Extreme Streamers, Tom, Dusk, Colin Camille, Patrick Fleming, Matthew Camille, Edmark Starr, Dylan Thomas, Lilac NA, Howard Craig Kervik, and Caging G. Thank you once again for watching, and until next time, have a good one.